The sun was setting on Earth, casting long shadows over the peaceful landscapes. But in the quiet corners of the world, something dark was stirring. A threat from the stars, unseen and unknown, was about to arrive. And it would change everything. For years, the Earth had remained relatively undisturbed. Yes, there had been whispers of extraterrestrial life, rumors and stories from those who claimed to have seen strange lights in the sky. But for the most part, humans lived in the belief that their planet was safe from the vastness of space. Little did they know, a race of aliens had been watching Earth, waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment came in the form of a highly advanced ship that appeared without warning over the skies of multiple countries. The ship, large and menacing, hovered above with a quiet hum that sent chills down the spines of anyone who saw it. The world held its breath as the first reports of the alien craft spread like wildfire. Governments scrambled to respond, but it was too late. The aliens had already made their move. A group of human children, innocent and unaware of the galaxy's dangers, were targeted in an operation so fast it seemed like a nightmare. The aliens' objective was clear: kidnap the children and disappear without leaving a trace. It wasn't about taking hostages, not initially. The aliens wanted the children for something more. But the question remained, why? The operation was swift. A few dozen children, from various parts of the world, were taken in the dead of night, snatched from their homes and schools with such precision that no one saw it coming. At first, the families thought it was a tragedy, a kidnapping spree of human criminals. But soon, the truth was revealed. These were no ordinary kidnappers. The aliens had not only captured children, they had taken the most valuable thing on Earth, the future. Across the world, parents panicked, and nations scrambled to find answers. The news spread quickly, but the governments had no idea how to respond. The children had vanished as if they had never existed, and every search mission, every rescue attempt, came up empty. Meanwhile, the world was thrown into chaos. But the worst part, no one knew who was behind it or why it had happened. The aliens, cold and calculating, had executed their plan flawlessly. They had studied humanity from afar for years, observing the planet's people, its weaknesses, and its strengths. They knew the humans were protective, that the parents of Earth would do anything to save their children. But they didn't fully understand the depth of that protection, the ferocity with which humans would fight back when pushed too far. But now the aliens had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated humanity. On the planet below, something had begun to stir, a realization spreading from the highest government officials to the everyday citizens. Earth was no longer just a blue and green dot in space. It was a world of survival, of fierce warriors who knew how to fight when it mattered most. And those who dared threaten their children would soon learn the true meaning of power. In the hushed silence that followed the first reports of the kidnapping, there was an air of uncertainty. What were the aliens after? Why did they target human children? And why did they think they could take them without consequence? But in the hearts of the people, there was something else, a quiet, growing fury that would soon change the course of history. Somewhere, deep in the heart of Earth, men and women with experience in warfare, soldiers, retired generals, and military strategists, began to speak of a fight that would be like none the aliens had ever known. They spoke of the power that came with desperation, the kind of fight that only came when humans had everything to lose. They spoke of war. But not all of them were ready for what was to come. On the alien ship, the ones who had made the decision to take the children looked at their prize with cold, calculating eyes. They didn't realize that in their quest for control, they had provoked something far worse, and they would soon pay the price for their ignorance. As the aliens celebrated their successful mission, they remained blissfully unaware of what awaited them. The ship, hidden away from Earth's prying eyes, was now a ticking time bomb. Every moment they spent with the stolen children, they pushed humanity closer to the edge of a war that would leave them scared forever. The first signs of Earth's response were quiet, almost imperceptible. A few whispered conversations in darkened rooms. A few messages sent out in secret, unnoticed by the invaders. But those whispers were not idle. They carried the weight of a deep and ancient anger. The aliens would soon discover that they had crossed a line that, once crossed, could never be undone. The kidnapping was only the beginning. Now the clock was ticking. And soon, the aliens would learn what it truly meant to anger humanity. Because when Earth's children were in danger, the wrath of the planet was not something anyone, not even the most powerful alien forces, could ever hope to survive. The game had changed, and the aliens had no idea what they were in for. The first signs of retaliation were subtle, barely noticeable to those on the outside. It wasn't a direct assault or an immediate military response. No, humanity had learned long ago that true power lies in preparation, in planning. The world, stunned by the audacity of the alien kidnappers, quickly mobilized in ways the invaders couldn't have possibly predicted. Across the globe, governments went into emergency mode. Top-secret meetings were held in underground bunkers, classified files were pulled from vaults, and experts in every field imaginable began to work together. But this time, it wasn't just the military elites making the decisions. Ordinary citizens, those with no formal military training, began to take action too. Word spread fast. Humans didn't take kindly to the kidnapping of their children. The first viral videos of the alien ship hovering over cities were shared millions of times, fueling an uprising of voices that would not be silenced. Even the most peaceful countries, those with no prior history of military engagement, began to make their presence felt. The world was waking up to the fact that they were not dealing with a simple group of invaders. They were dealing with humanity's raw power, the power to fight for what they loved most. One group of people, in particular, was more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. Retired soldiers, war veterans, and military commanders. These were people who had seen conflict firsthand and understood the stakes in ways the aliens could not. They were the first to realize what the aliens had done. They had underestimated Earth's warriors. In the dark corners of the world, these seasoned veterans gathered in secret, forming alliances that spanned continents. They exchanged knowledge, shared strategies, and began to unite under one banner: the protection of Earth's children. They called themselves the Wrathbearers. The Wrathbearers understood one thing that the aliens never would. When humans are pushed to the edge, they become something else entirely. They don't just fight. They survive, adapt, and evolve. The aliens had poked the bear, and now they would witness the consequences. As these human warriors began to prepare, so too did the children aboard the alien ship. They were held captive, but not defeated. Despite the aliens' best efforts to break their spirits, the children showed no fear. They had been raised by a species that fought tooth and nail for every inch of ground they held. Their parents' legacy lived on in them, and though they were in enemy hands, they never stopped thinking, never stopped learning, never stopped fighting. Somewhere deep within the alien vessel, a young boy, no older than 12, began to piece together a plan. He had seen things, heard things that the aliens hadn't accounted for. Earth's children were not helpless, and though they were kept in confinement, they were not broken. They were learning. Meanwhile, the aliens, blissfully unaware of the rising tide of resistance, focused on their plans for domination. They had taken Earth's children, but what they didn't realize was that in doing so, they had awakened something ancient, something deeply rooted in the DNA of humanity. The first real blow to the alien captors came not from the soldiers, but from the children. They began to pass messages to each other, their minds sharper and quicker than the aliens had anticipated. They communicated in ways the aliens didn't understand, using subtle gestures, signs, and even technology that had been smuggled in by human resistance fighters. Earth's young were united by a bond the invaders could not see. Back on Earth, it became clear that this was no ordinary battle. It wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight for Earth's very soul. The Wrathbearers weren't just preparing for battle. They were preparing for something far more dangerous, a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It wouldn't be a war of weapons and tactics alone. It would be a war of humanity's unyielding will to protect what mattered most. The world, for the first time in history, stood united against a common enemy, and they would not go down quietly. Every corner of the globe felt the shift, from the small villages in Africa to the crowded cities of Europe. Humanity's response was not going to be a single blow. It would be a barrage of every weapon and tactic, from the most advanced technology to the oldest of war traditions. At the same time, the aliens grew more confident. They believed they had won. After all, they had the children, and humanity had done nothing but cower. But as the days went on, something began to change. The kids, who once cowered in fear, were now growing bolder. They began to organize, showing the aliens that Earth's children were far more than they had ever anticipated. The aliens might have had the numbers, the technology, and the ships, but they underestimated one thing. Earth's will to fight back was not just a matter of survival. It was a matter of pride, of love, of the very essence of humanity itself. When the aliens threatened Earth's future, they unleashed something far more terrifying than they could imagine. The Wrathbearers were ready. The children were ready. And Earth's vengeance was about to unfold in ways no one could have predicted. And so, the clock was ticking. The aliens had made their move. And now, the world was about to respond in the most brutal way imaginable. The first blows of the war were not yet visible, but they were coming. And they would be swift, unforgiving, and relentless. The tension was unbearable as the days passed, and the world continued to hold its breath. Governments and military leaders had finally understood that Earth was no longer just facing a threat to its children. They were up against a force that had underestimated humanity itself. Now, it was time for Earth to act, and the world was about to witness something it had never seen before. A united, vengeful response that would shake the very foundation of the alien invaders' confidence. The Wrathbearers, the resistance group formed by war veterans and military experts from every corner of Earth, had spent every hour since the kidnapping preparing for this moment. They knew their first strike had to be swift, and they couldn't afford any mistakes. No longer were they just fighting to protect their families. They were fighting to show the aliens the full extent of humanity's power. At first, it seemed like an impossible mission. The aliens had technological superiority, an entire fleet at their command, and the children. But there was one thing the invaders didn't have: humanity's relentless determination to survive. In the dead of night, the Wrathbearers' first strike began. The group had infiltrated alien communications, intercepted their signals, and pinpointed key locations across Earth's continents where the invaders had set up their command centers. No longer would Earth simply wait to be invaded. They were taking the fight to the aliens before they could strike again. A massive underground facility in the Nevada desert was the first target. This was a location that the aliens had established as a central command center. Earth had already been tracking the aliens' movements, and the Wrathbearers had spent weeks preparing. Now, armed with cutting-edge technology developed by both humans and defected alien scientists, the Wrathbearers were ready to strike with precision. The battle was swift. The aliens had set up defenses, but they were no match for the human strategy. The Wrathbearers infiltrated the command center with ease, dismantling alien technology and disabling their communication systems. In a matter of hours, they had crippled one of the most vital parts of the alien operation. The first strike was a resounding success, but it was only the beginning. As the Wrathbearers celebrated their victory, a young girl, no older than 8, watched from her prison cell aboard the alien ship. Her name was Emma. And though she was terrified, she couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Emma, like the other children, had been taken without mercy, without explanation. But deep inside, she knew something had changed. The adults were fighting back. They weren't going to let the aliens win. Her parents had always told her that humanity was capable of anything, of surviving, of persevering. And in that moment, Emma believed them. While the Wrathbearers were pushing back on Earth, the children aboard the alien vessel were starting to realize their own power. They weren't just helpless captives. They were human, and they could think, plan, and resist. The aliens had underestimated them. Emma had overheard alien soldiers talking about their plans to break Earth's resistance by threatening the children. But the more she listened, the more she understood the truth. The children were the key to victory. If they could somehow communicate with their parents, relay vital information about the aliens' weaknesses, humanity could strike a decisive blow. In the darkness of her cell, Emma began to quietly organize. She wasn't alone. Slowly, the other children began to speak in hushed voices, working together to form a plan of their own. They knew their situation was dire, but they also knew that they had something the aliens couldn't control: their minds, their ability to think beyond what the invaders expected. Back on Earth, the Wrathbearers prepared for their next move. Their victory in Nevada was just a taste of what was to come. Earth was united in its response, and the message was clear. Humanity was not weak. It was not a species to be underestimated. And as the Wrathbearers moved to launch their next attack, they began to realize that the aliens had miscalculated something crucial. They had underestimated humanity's heart. The Wrathbearers had no intention of stopping until every last one of Earth's children was returned, and the invaders were driven out of their world. Every blow they struck was a message. You can take our children, but you cannot break us. In space, the alien invaders were starting to feel the weight of their mistake. The first signs of human retaliation were too swift to counter. They thought they could control the situation with ease, but humanity's unity, its fighting spirit, was proving to be something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. And back aboard the alien ship, Emma and the other children had begun their quiet rebellion. With each passing hour, their hope grew. The first strike from Earth had been a success, but now humanity was planning something bigger, something that would make the aliens regret ever stepping foot on Earth. The war had begun, and it was one that would see the aliens learning a painful truth. Humanity would never back down, not when the future of their children was at stake. The first wave of strikes had shaken the alien invaders to their core. What they had initially thought was a small-scale resistance had transformed into something far larger, a full-scale war that was beginning to tip in humanity's favor. The aliens had underestimated Earth's resilience, its adaptability, and most dangerously, its rage. They had taken humanity's children, believing that such an action would break Earth's spirit. Instead, it had ignited a fire that the invaders could no longer contain. Back on Earth, the Wrathbearers had expanded their efforts. Each new strike was more calculated and effective than the last. It was not just military personnel leading the charge now. Scientists, civilians, and even children began contributing to the war effort. Every corner of the planet had become a battlefield, every street a front in humanity's fight for survival. The aliens were finding themselves increasingly outmaneuvered. What had once been a strategic advantage, superior technology, was now crumbling under humanity's ability to innovate and adapt. The Wrathbearers had seized alien equipment and reverse-engineered it, turning it against its creators. The aliens had never anticipated that the very technology they believed to be their strength would become their weakness. But the real blow to the invaders' morale came from the unexpected source: the children. The whispers aboard the alien ships had not gone unnoticed. Emma, the young girl who had once felt powerless, had become a leader of sorts among the prisoners. Her quiet rebellion had spread like wildfire. The other children, no longer silent captives, had found ways to communicate with Earth. They had cracked the alien encryption codes and sent vital intelligence back home. The Wrathbearers, now aware of the children's newfound strength, began to focus their efforts on liberating the captives. The more the children revealed about the alien fleet's structure, the faster Earth could strike. They learned that the alien commanders were just as vulnerable as the invaders on the ground. The Wrathbearers began targeting key leaders, decimating their ranks one by one. But the aliens weren't giving up without a fight. Their response was swift and ruthless. The invasion force regrouped, launching a counteroffensive that aimed to crush humanity's resistance once and for all. The aliens were starting to realize the true depth of their mistake. What they had seen as a small, inconsequential species had become a nightmare they couldn't escape. The situation aboard the alien ship had reached a boiling point. The children, emboldened by their newfound sense of purpose, had taken matters into their own hands. In a coordinated effort, they'd managed to disable the ship's internal systems, making it nearly impossible for the aliens to maintain control. Emma had become the leader of the group, her leadership pushing the other children to act. As the aliens struggled to regain control of the ship, the Wrathbearers launched a coordinated attack on the remaining alien bases. It was the most dangerous mission humanity had ever undertaken. The odds were stacked against them, but they had one thing the aliens didn't: unity. The war had gone global, and every person on Earth, every ally from across the galaxy, was determined to see humanity victorious. On the alien flagship, Commander Trezor paced back and forth in his war room, a look of deep frustration etched across his face. They had thought they could break Earth's spirit, could force it to its knees, but what they had done instead was awaken a sleeping giant. A species that refused to be enslaved, a species that would fight to the last breath to protect its future. The children have become a force to be reckoned with, Trezor muttered under his breath. And the humans, they're not giving up. They're not what we thought they were. His officers, once confident in their victory, were starting to feel the pressure. The tide had turned. Humanity was now on the offensive, and the alien invaders were losing their grip. Back on Earth, the Wrathbearers weren't slowing down. They had learned to use the alien weapons against the invaders with deadly precision. They had become experts at their tactics, but more than that, they were becoming something the aliens couldn't understand: a people who fought not just for survival, but for the hope of their children. The mission had shifted from defense to reclaiming what was rightfully theirs. With each victory, the Wrathbearers were not just liberating children. They were freeing humanity from the grasp of an empire that had underestimated them at every turn. The aliens had thought they could control Earth, could use fear to break humanity's will. But what they had done was provoke something far worse: a unified, relentless fury that would not stop until every last child was home. As the battle for Earth raged on, Emma and the other children, once helpless, had become symbols of humanity's resilience. They had sparked a rebellion that no one could have foreseen. It was not just the Wrathbearers who were fighting. It was every human, from every corner of the planet, banding together to face the alien invaders. And so, the war continued. The aliens were left to wonder if they had made a grave mistake underestimating humanity's power. They had thought Earth was a soft target, a species ripe for conquest. Instead, they had unwittingly awakened a force they could not control, and soon, they would learn the true cost of that mistake. The humans were fighting with everything they had, and the aliens were starting to realize they had made the ultimate miscalculation. The invasion had turned into a nightmare for the alien forces. The Wrathbearers, once a ragtag group of survivors, were now a highly coordinated and disciplined force. Their ranks had swelled with soldiers from every corner of Earth, and with each passing day, their numbers seemed to grow. The aliens had made one of their biggest mistakes. They had underestimated humanity. They had thought they could take the children, break Earth's spirit, and leave humanity to fall into despair. But they had done the opposite. The abduction of the children had only made the humans more dangerous, more determined to win. On the front lines of Earth's defense, General Harper stood alongside her team in the war room. The holographic maps of the alien fleets and their military bases were projected across the room. But something had changed. The maps no longer showed just alien-controlled zones. They now displayed human-controlled sectors, red lines encroaching into alien-held space. Humanity had begun to push back, reclaiming what was once lost. "We hit them harder than they expected," General Harper said, her voice steady but laced with a fire that had been absent when the invasion began. We've taken out their communication networks and weakened their military leadership. Her eyes shifted to the hologram showing the status of the alien flagship. The enemy ship was still operational, but it was beginning to show signs of damage. The shields were weakening, and the systems were failing in places. Earth was winning, slowly but surely. The tide had turned, and it had all started with the children. Emma and the other captives, once held in the alien ship as prisoners, were now fighting back. They had not only survived but thrived. They had turned the alien ship's technology against its creators, creating chaos on board and sending critical data to Earth. Thanks to the children's ingenuity and resourcefulness, humanity had learned more about the invaders than they ever could have imagined. Now, the humans had the upper hand. The alien fleet, once invincible in their eyes, was now facing a slow but relentless dismantling. The loss of key leaders had left the alien forces disoriented, unable to coordinate effective strategies. The humans, meanwhile, had learned to adapt quickly. They had reclaimed their cities, their lands, and now they had begun to take back their children. In the midst of the battle, one message resonated more than any other. The Wrathbearers had risen. The children had once been innocent captives, fearful and confused. But in their captivity, they had become leaders. They had become symbols of the resistance. Their knowledge of the alien ship and technology had turned the tide in humanity's favor. They had learned to fight not just to survive, but to win. And in doing so, they had become the war's most powerful weapon. On the alien flagship, Commander Tracer had grown more and more frustrated. His once commanding presence was now fraught with worry and panic. The humans were relentless. Every time he thought they had been defeated, they struck again. The humans had adapted quickly, exploiting the weaknesses in their defenses. The children, who had been taken as pawns in their game, had proven to be humanity's most potent weapon. Tracer cursed the day he had underestimated Earth. How did we miss this? Tracer muttered to himself, eyes scanning the tactical display of the human forces. They're everywhere. They're unstoppable. The humans weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their future. And with each victory, they grew stronger, more unified. The loss of their children had forged a new kind of warrior. The Wrathbearers were not just soldiers, they were the very embodiment of humanity's will to survive. And the aliens, now on the defensive, would soon find out what it meant to challenge that will. Earth's victory was no longer a distant dream. It was becoming a reality. The aliens were being pushed back, piece by piece. Every battle, every strike, was a reminder that humanity would never surrender. The invasion had failed. But even as victory loomed on the horizon, General Harper knew that the fight was far from over. The aliens would not give up easily. There would be more battles to fight, more enemies to face. But they would fight, and they would win. Earth had awakened a force that no enemy could contain. As the Wrathbearers prepared for their final push, the human forces were united like never before. The alien threat was real, but humanity was even more formidable. The death of their enemies was inevitable. Earth had shown that when you took their children, you awoke a fury that would not rest until every last invader was gone. And in the depths of the alien flagship, Commander Tracer knew his time was running out. The humans had come for the children, and now they were coming for him. The war had raged for months, but now, as the alien forces scrambled to regroup, humanity stood at the precipice of victory. The final battle was upon them, and the stakes could not have been higher. Earth's forces, led by General Harper and the Wrathbearers, had pushed deep into alien-controlled territory, the heart of the invaders' military might. Their flagship was within reach. All that stood between humanity and total victory was one last, brutal confrontation. Inside the command center, the air crackled with tension. General Harper stood at the head of the table, surrounded by her most trusted officers. Maps of the alien flagship, showing the interior layout, had been downloaded thanks to the efforts of the children and the data they'd retrieved. Humanity had learned everything they needed to know about the alien ship and its defenses. The plan was simple: infiltrate the flagship, destroy its core, and wipe out the alien leadership once and for all. But there was a catch. The flagship was not just a ship. It was a mobile fortress, heavily guarded and fiercely protected. The aliens had stacked their forces in preparation for this final assault, and any attempt to board the ship would be met with deadly resistance. But General Harper was no stranger to impossible odds. "We'll strike hard and fast," she declared, her voice resolute. "We can't afford to give them time to recover. This ends today." The human forces were already on the move. A massive fleet of Earth's finest ships was en route to the alien flagship. The Wrathbearers, led by Emma, now a seasoned leader, had been tasked with the most dangerous mission: infiltrating the heart of the ship and taking out the alien command center. They knew the risks, but they also knew what was at stake. The alien forces had taken their children, their homes, and their planet. The time for diplomacy was over. As they neared the flagship, the alien defenses came into view. The flagship was a monstrosity of twisted metal and alien architecture, a testament to the invaders' strength and hubris. But to the Wrathbearers, it was just another target. They had learned to fight in the darkest corners of the galaxy, and they had become masters of guerrilla warfare. Emma stood in the cockpit of the lead ship, her heart pounding in her chest. She looked out at the alien ship, a mix of awe and determination in her eyes. "We're almost there," she said, turning to her squad. Her team of Wrathbearers, each one a trained soldier, nodded in silent agreement. They had been through hell and back, but now they would finish what they had started. The battle began without warning. As the human ships closed in, the alien flagship's massive weapons fired, streaks of deadly energy lighting up the space around them. But the humans were prepared. They darted and weaved through the enemy fire, using their speed and agility to stay one step ahead. The Wrathbearers, in their smaller, faster ships, engaged in hit-and-run tactics, launching surprise attacks on alien defensive positions. Every strike they made was calculated, every move designed to weaken the enemy before they could retaliate. Inside the flagship, the aliens were scrambling. Commander Trezor, now more desperate than ever, watched as his forces were torn apart by the relentless onslaught of human ships. "They're too fast," he growled, slamming his fist on the console. "We can't keep up with them." The alien fleet's once imposing strength was faltering. Humanity's tactics had evolved far beyond anything the invaders had anticipated. The Wrathbearers had proven to be more than just warriors. They were tacticians, strategists, and leaders in their own right. They were the weapon humanity had never known they needed, and they were unstoppable. But as the battle raged, Emma and her team had one final mission: infiltrate the core of the flagship and destroy the alien command center. The Wrathbearers boarded the ship, fighting their way through the corridors and halls of the alien behemoth. Every step was a battle, every hallway a trap waiting to be sprung. But they pressed on, their eyes fixed on the objective. When they reached the central command center, the door was sealed tight. The aliens knew what was coming, and they were determined to stop them. But Emma and her team weren't afraid. They had come too far to back down now. With a blast of energy from a specialized explosive, the door blew open. Inside, the alien leadership was waiting, preparing to make their final stand. But it was too late. The Wrathbearers stormed in, guns blazing, cutting through the alien forces with precision and speed. The aliens fought back, but they were no match for the fury of Earth's finest soldiers. Finally, Emma reached the heart of the command center. She planted the explosive charge at the base of the central core. It was a simple mission, but one that would determine the fate of the galaxy. She pressed the detonator. The entire flagship shook as the core detonated, sending shockwaves through the alien ship. The blast was followed by a deafening silence, and then the entire ship began to break apart. The battle was over. Humanity had won. Outside, Earth's fleet watched as the alien flagship crumbled, its once mighty form disintegrating before their eyes. The invaders had come to Earth with the intent of conquest, but in the end, they had learned the hard way. Humanity was not to be underestimated. As the last of the alien ships flooded into the void, the humans stood victorious. Earth had been saved, and the Wrathbearers had become legends. The war was over, and humanity had proven that when you pushed them to the brink, they would always fight back, harder than ever before. The Wrathbearers, with their mission complete, stood together in the aftermath, knowing that they had secured a future for Earth. It had been a long, hard fight, but they had won. And they would never forget the lessons they had learned along the way. The battlefield was eerily silent. The once mighty flagship of the alien invaders had been reduced to rubble, floating in fragments throughout space. Earth's fleet had already begun the slow, methodical process of returning home, their mission complete. Yet, even in the glow of their victory, the Wrathbearers couldn't shake the weight of the war that had cost so much. They stood on the bridge of the lead ship, gazing out at the wreckage of the alien force. Emma, who had once been a cadet with dreams of fighting, now looked out with a deeper understanding of what war truly meant. She was no longer just a soldier. She was a leader, one who had seen her team face unimaginable horrors, but who had also emerged victorious. "The fight is over," General Harper said softly, her voice carrying across the ship's bridge. She stood beside Emma, her eyes fixed on the wreckage as if seeing the end of an era. "But the world we return to is not the same. The battle for Earth had been a grueling and costly one, but they had emerged victorious. The alien threat was no more, and the once dying planet was now safe. But for the Wrathbearers, the consequences of the war would linger for a long time. They had fought with everything they had, but what would the future hold for them now? What kind of world would they return to after everything they had endured? Emma's mind was clouded with these questions. She had led her team through the depths of combat, but now that the fighting was done, there was a strange emptiness that lingered. The war was over, but the scars would remain. She turned away from the view, seeking solace in the camaraderie of her team. Her fellow Wrathbearers stood nearby, each of them reflecting on the battle that had brought them here. "It's not over," said a voice from behind her. It was Sergeant Blake, one of the oldest members of the Wrathbearers, his gruff demeanor softened by the toll of the war. "This war may be over, but the fight we've been in, it never really ends. It just changes." Emma nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. The war had taken its toll on all of them. The planet they had fought so hard to protect, and the people they had sworn to defend, would now require healing. There was no simple victory. The cost of war was not something that could be measured by just the destruction of the enemy. It was the toll it took on those who fought, the sacrifices made, the lives lost, and the futures changed. As the ship made its way back to Earth, the crew was quiet, each person dealing with the aftermath in their own way. Some were lost in thought, others in prayer. The world they had fought for was not the world they had left behind. It would take time for the scars to fade. But time, Emma knew, was the one thing they didn't have. When Earth's atmosphere came into view, the Wrathbearers couldn't help but feel a rush of relief. The planet they had saved was now within reach. The landscape they knew, the homes they had longed for, would soon be a reality again. But it was clear that life would never be the same. The memories of the war, the faces of the fallen, the battles fought, all of it would stay with them. Earth might be free, but the Wrathbearers had earned their place in history. Emma stood at the front of the ship, looking down at the home she had once taken for granted. It was no longer just a planet. It was a symbol of resilience, of humanity's unyielding spirit. Earth had survived, and they had fought to the end to ensure its survival. And now, they would rebuild. The humans would return to their lives, but they would never forget the cost. And for the Wrathbearers, they would carry with them the memories of what they had fought for: humanity, unity, and the unwavering will to protect everything they held dear. As the ship descended toward Earth's surface, Emma turned to her team, a proud smile on her face. "We did it," she said softly. "We fought for Earth, and now we rebuild it. We rebuild it together." The Wrathbearers nodded in unison. There was a moment of silence. Then a chorus of cheers erupted from the crew. Victory was theirs, but more importantly, they had proven that humanity could overcome even the most insurmountable of odds. They had been tested in ways they never expected. But now, they stood stronger than ever. The ship touched down, and the Wrathbearers disembarked, stepping onto the soil of a world that was free once more. The war had been long, the battles brutal, but humanity had won. And now, with Earth safe, the Wrathbearers would help rebuild. They had taken their first step back into the world they had saved, and they would never forget the journey that had brought them here.